fastest show in sports.
Things have gotten so bad for the Miami Dolphins, it has gotten to the point where a New York City sportscaster on the all-sports radio station there put out this list about the team that is the biggest laughingstock in the National Football League, and they picked the Miami Dolphins. Ridiculous, of course. The Cleveland Browns are 100 times worse. I can name a lot of teams that are like that, but if you stop for a minute, and the Dolphins fans are going to hate to hear this, it's easy to see why people are looking at the Dolphins, which used to be one of the most respected organizations in football, is now the biggest dumpster fire, is now a complete disaster, and is one that's not going to go anywhere for quite some time. What's really hysterical is to hear where the blame is being placed. I happen to hear a former player who's on local radio in South Florida, and he is going tooth and nail against Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback. And for the head coach, Mike McDaniel, he's going, oh boy, I know Mike is all upset, and Mike's having a tough time. Oh, stop the favoritistic bullshit, will you? Come on. Everybody here has got a piece to blame. And not only that, but you've got the local press in South Florida who won't say anything about ownership. Of course not. They don't want to. Look, you have to realize that a lot of people in that market work for the Dolphins, one way, shape, form, or another. They get paid by the organization. So what are they going to do? Come out and say something actually real? Go ahead and take someone to task? Of course not. They don't want to lose their gig. And I respect that. I know that's the way it is. When it comes to those who call games, those who are involved on the radio, you're getting paid by the organization, so you don't want to piss off your meal ticket. That's okay. I get it. In this day and age, and especially when you're getting close to retirement age, you got to make sure you don't blow your pension, even though you'll get a National Football League pension. But I digress for a moment here. The piling on for Tua is not only just hysterical, but it's unwarranted in some ways. I mean, let's look at this from the standpoint of being a team that's an utter disaster right now. First of all, let's start at the top. Stephen Ross, and I have gone after Stephen Ross. Look, I don't know Stephen Ross. As far as I'm concerned, he never stole a freight train. But he's the guy who pulls the trigger, and he's the one who has made these awful choices. One way or another, the owner has got to sign off on everything. You're the guy or the gal that puts people in charge of your organization. He's the one who decided that Chris Greer was the best general manager for the job. Sorry, I'm going to lose it on that one. It's a good thing I don't have coffee here. It would spit against everything. It was a terrible choice. But somebody told him it was a good pick. He doesn't know the National Football League like people who are in the game. There might have been better at the time. I don't know. There certainly are better now. And Greer had to go for all the terrible decisions that he made. And not just at the head coaching position, because that also comes down to the owner, but the roster and all the players there. It's not just one player that is screwing this place up right now. It's a bunch of players. When you lose a guy like Hill, when he's gone and your receiving core immediately gets decimated, you got to have somebody there to pick up the slack. They don't have anybody. That falls on the general manager. But let's stop there for a minute, okay? Stephen Ross made the choice. Stephen Ross made the mistake. And Stephen Ross is the guy who stood there while Mike McDaniel was being hired as the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins and talking about what a great job he was going to do. Mike McDaniel is a career assistant. And again, don't know the man, don't know him personally. Again, another guy who probably never stole a freight train. But was McDaniel the best you could do? I mean, seriously, you're talking about a marquee franchise in the NFL. That's what the Dolphins are. It's still the undefeated team, even though it goes back 197 years. But this has been a franchise that has always been very well thought of. That's the best you can do? Is a career assistant and a guy who has bounced? Look, McDaniel has shown that while he may be a nice guy with absolutely no fashion sense whatsoever, and also, come on, you got to get rid of that scraggly beard. I mean, come on now. You're not 17 years old. Grow up. Look like an adult, will you? Look like a head football coach. That was the one thing I thought of when I first saw Mike McDaniel. I said, this guy's a head football coach in the National Football League? What, is he dressed to go to the prom? Is he dressed to go to a rave? I mean, this guy looks like a 17-year-old who lost his way somewhere, didn't have his ticket, and had to scalp it outside the arena. I mean, come on. Have some taste, have some style, have some class. How about having some ability to be a head coach? Yeah, okay, there are people who are going to come in and say, you know, Ed, the Dolphins at one point under Mike McDaniel looked like they were going to get better. Yeah, they did. And then what happened? This season comes along and they tank. And again, they didn't look that great last season either. So all of these apologists out there who are saying, you got to feel sorry for Mike McDaniel. No, you don't. No, you don't. He's a head football coach in the National Football League. Hey, you want to play lumberjack, you learn to handle your end of the log. And he can't handle it. It's just not possible. So you got to go out and find somebody now. And please, no more career assistants. Find somebody who knows what it's like to... Look, at this point, I wouldn't care if the Dolphins went to college, which I've always thought is a terrible choice for a head coach. But at least somebody who knows how to run a program. But you got to have somebody who understands what happens in the National Football League. He understands from an assistant's perspective, but he is not a good head coach. So please, come on. The guys out there, the former players who are in the media in South Florida, who are all finding excuses for Mike. Look, I love you. I respect you. I know you. Stop. You're embarrassing yourself because this is a guy who shouldn't be head coach of the Dolphins. Now, let's deal with the Tua issue, okay? I said quite some time ago that I thought Tua was damaged goods. He's a guy who's been concussed too many times. When you get that kind of injury, you get a little gun shy. And I can absolutely tell you, and everybody can see it, that after Tua suffered his rash of concussions, he became a different player. He's not as dynamic as he was. His decision process is different. It's got to be, because guess what? A concussion is a brain bruise. And there's a chance, some doctors have told him that if you take another concussion, look, he could take 10 concussions and he could be fine. But it's the brain. He could take one and the guy could lose his ability to speak, his ability to walk. Anything could happen. He's looking at a later in life where he could become a vegetable simply because of playing football. That's got to weigh on a guy's mind. So yes, there is the absolute fact that Tua has become less. But the one thing that, and this is the thing that griefs me, that just grinds me, when people are blaming Tua for things like the interceptions, things like the offense not working, things like what happened this past weekend. Have you looked at his offensive line? What is this, a collection of people that were just hanging around outside the Wawa and needed jobs? I mean, some of these offensive linemen the Dolphins have, these are guys who should be in International Federation of Eating, of speed eating contest. They should be out there doing the Nathan's Hot Dog Challenge instead of being on a football field. They're awful. They're terrible. Good football teams have good offensive lines. And good offensive lines protect quarterbacks. And quarterbacks, when they're protected, get a chance to make the right decisions, where they are not rushed, where they have time to look over a defense, where they have time to let the play develop, where they don't have to bail out and do it all themselves. And frankly, I think Tua's at the stage right now where he's not making good decisions because he doesn't have the personnel to make the good decisions. And stop, before somebody lights me up and says, oh, Ed, you're just being an apologist for Tua, you know he sucks. No, I don't. What, do you think all of a sudden Tagovailoa all of a sudden forgot how to play football? In one season, one game. He dumbed out and completely forgot? Of course not. He's a professional. He was a hell of a quarterback in college, which doesn't always equate to being a hell of a quarterback in the NFL. We know that. But this is a guy right now who's dealing without a decent receiving core, with an offensive line that frankly couldn't work for high school rates. You've got one good running back in Achane who is a stud, and you got to work with him. But even Achane can't be good all the time. He can't bail you out every single game because he still needs an offensive line. And then you need a coach and a coaching staff to be able to use what you have, to be able to plug in what you have, to be able to make them better, to be able to have the plays, to be able to create the plays. And it's not happening. You have a systemic failure from the first floor down of the Dolphins. And while everybody is hammering away at Tagovailoa, and again, here's the other thing that I'm still stunned at. Are people forgetting that Tua signed a contract extension just a couple years ago? And that in that contract extension, if they get rid of him before a certain date in 2026, and I think it's June 1st, if they get rid of him, it's a $99 million cap hit. Dead money. What are you going to do? The Dolphins are the ones who put themselves in that position. They signed him to a contract. And even at the time when they signed Tua, the jury was still out whether or not he was going to be the quarterback of the future, the franchise quarterback. But they said, let's give him a shot. He's got a coach. Things are working for him. They knee-jerked. They shotgunned. They went too fast in giving him the contract extension. They didn't have to. They could have waited to see what happened. They didn't, and now they're stuck. So now there's a dead salary cap sitting there. And meantime, you've got other people. And again, it comes down to the media, who's basically fueling the knee-jerk fans are going, you got to get rid of Tua. You got to put him on the bench. You got to get rid of him next season. You blind dolt. Are you not looking at the money that's involved, the salary cap? That's what makes the NFL work. And right now, Tua's sitting there. What are you going to do? Go to him and say, we want you to renegotiate your contract? He doesn't have to. He can. He can work his way out, renegotiate it, try to find something else, try to get another team. But is another team going to take that dead money? Are they just going to pay the Dolphins to get Tua? Doubtful. He hasn't shown that he's going to be this star quarterback someplace yet and lead a team to the playoffs and to the Super Bowl. But again, this has got to stop where it's a scapegoating issue. When somebody calls the Miami Dolphins the laughingstock of the NFL, they're not far off. Because you can go ahead and talk to me all about 4-game winning streaks all you want, but when the chips are down, when you got to go ahead and play for something, and they play a big game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and there's a slim chance that they can get into the playoffs, and they tank it, that score wasn't even as close as it indicates. I mean, that game was over real early. The Dolphins weren't in it. That's an issue from the management who made the decisions, the general manager who's out, who put the roster together, the coach who is way in over his head at this point, the players who are not that good, a quarterback who is fading, perhaps because of physical issues, and simply doesn't have the staff in front of him to get the job done. What the hell do you want? I mean, seriously, when you put all those things together and encapsulate it, who are you going to blame? Blame everybody. That's where we're at. This is a large failure. Moving forward, Mike McDaniel is out, fired, gone, goodbye. And I usually say when you're going to fire somebody, who you're going to hire. I'm not even going to go there right now, because you'll find somebody. You got to find somebody better. But he's gone. He's out. Tua, sure, go ahead and bench him if you want this season. What good's that going to do? He's still dealing with the same roster. What? You're going to put a backup quarterback, a second, third, fourth string quarterback in there, and you think that's going to do good for the rest of the season? All you're doing is you're bending to the fans and you're bending to the nonsense. I say let him play. I say keep him in there. I say make sure that he gets his reps and he works and he earns his gig. And maybe he'll work out of this. Maybe he won't. But McDaniel's gone. Tua, what are you going to do? But you got to fill a lot of holes on this team right now. And maybe, just maybe, one day they'll go back to being a respected franchise in the National Football League. They won't be a laughingstock. They won't be a dumpster fire. But it's not one person. It's not one guy's fault. This is a massive failure on a huge scale by an organization that maybe even needs a new owner. But that is a story for another day.
Ed Berliner, the fastest show in sports.